for coming. Hi, welcome to the Crozet CAC meeting. This meeting is being held pursuant to and in compliance with emergency ordinance number 20-A16, an emergency ordinance to ensure the continuity of government during the COVID-19 disaster. And the committee members who are electronically present at this meeting, we will go ahead and go around and introduce ourselves like we usually do. I am Ali Pesh, the outgoing chair of the Crozet CIC, and I live near Mid Springs.
Hello, I'm Brian Day. I lived in Emerald Ridge, and this is my last meeting for a while.
Thanks, Brian.
Joe Four, Highlands.
Valerie Long, Old Trail.
Mark McKenney, Westall.
Michael Monaco, Emerson Commons.
John Bird, St. George.
Mike Kunkel, Quarry Farm.
Costas Albertus, I live out on 250.
Right, Jenny.
I'm Jenny Moore. I represent on the Planning Commission, and Anne's on her way, but she's just a little bit behind, so she'll be here soon.
I think I got everybody. Thank you all for introducing yourself. The persons responsible for receiving public comment are the Crozet Community Advisory Committee. Opportunities for the public to access and participate in the electronic meeting are posted on the Albemarle County calendar. And we also have county staff present tonight. Maybe you guys can introduce yourselves too, because you're scattered about and I don't know all of you.
I'll start. I'm Rachel Falkenstein. I'm planning manager with community development.
Kevin McDermott, transportation planner, community development.
Thanks.
Jessica Hirsch-Ballering, transportation planner with community development.
Okay.
I'm Lance. I'm sorry, Lance. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry, I'm Lance Stewart. I'm with Albemarle County. I'm the director of the Department of Facilities and Environmental Services. And one of the things that we do is build the stuff that Mr. McDermott is going to talk to you about.
Sweet.
And I'm Carolyn.
And Carolyn's managing this electronic meeting for us. Thank you. All right, so have the CAC members had a chance to look at Valerie's minutes from last month? And if so, do we have any corrections, or would someone like to make a motion to adopt those minutes?
So moved.
We got a second from Costas. All right, all in favor of approving those minutes from February? Any opposed? Okay, thank you guys. All right, I don't have the agenda in front of me because I didn't print anything out tonight, but I think we can go ahead, Rachel, with Kevin and his group's presentation.
Great.
Well, if I see we've got Jim is now on. Are you a new member?
Apparently I got the email, so I guess I'm a member now.
Okay, well, so welcome, Jim Duncan. You want to say where you live?
Parkside Village.
Cool. I think we probably have a couple more people. I don't know when they're joining because we had a fair amount of spots open, and I know Brian's. I'll just take this minute to say thank you, Brian. And I'm not sure. I think there might be a couple other people not returning, but they're not here for me to thank. But thank you to them too. Anyway, so we'll go ahead, and unless anybody else jumps on, I think we're good to go with Kevin's
Wonderful. Thank you all for having me. As I said, I'm Kevin McDermott. I'm a planning manager and I oversee the transportation planning division. I was asked to come here and talk about transportation with you all. I do have a presentation that I will pull up. Okay, let me see if I can get this right. Are you all still seeing the development slide, or are you seeing the presentation version of it?
We can still see your outline.
Okay, let me grab the other one. Now it changed, it moved it around on me, so I don't know if I'm going to grab the same one or a different one.
No worries.
Sorry, while I'm trying to pull this up, I will just say that Jessica Hirsch-Ballerine is here. She's been working in the transportation division for about 5 months, and I don't think you all have met her, so I just wanted to bring her in so you could, so she could introduce herself and listen to all the things we have to say about transportation. So that's why she's here. And then as I get into the presentation, I will also introduce Lance. As Lance said, in a lot of cases after we have gotten the projects funded, if we have decided to administer those projects through the local administration process, then Lance's group will be the one that takes that over. So that's why he is here as well.
Great.
And he's going to talk. He's going to talk about a few of the projects as we go. Still no, huh?
No, you're good. That's it.
Oh, you're looking at the right one.
Yep.
Huh?
Yep.
Okay, wonderful. So today I'm not just going to talk about the transportation projects that we have underway, but I'd like to give you all a little bit of background about the process that we go through when it comes to planning for transportation and then getting transportation projects funded and then moving into the construction phase, just so everybody here has a little background on how the county works when it comes to these types of projects. So this is the meeting agenda that you're looking at right now. And you can see we're going to talk about where the projects come from, and that's getting into the early planning process, how those projects are chosen, the project prioritization, how we fund the projects, how they are scheduled, and then finally, then we'll get into the projects that are being worked on right now and going through some of those project updates. So to begin with, just to give you all an understanding of what's going on here, we really, projects come to us through all kinds of channels. So this just is going to give you a little bit of an idea of the different ways that we see projects come to us, how we start to identify those projects. So to begin with, we as staff work closely with the Department of Transportation, and with them, we are pretty constantly monitoring road conditions for safety, operations, accessibility. So VDOT is out there all the time checking on roads. If you have ever been on the VDOT website and issued some sort of either a complaint or a request about transportation, that gets funneled back to a group of us that review all that. And so we're always monitoring if there's safety issues, or if someone says that there's large backups at intersections or anything like that. Beyond that, they're also out there driving the roads all the time. anytime accidents occur in the county, we're always reviewing those accidents that happen. When we see areas that are getting a high number of accidents, then we kind of focus in on there and start to look at what's going on, why there might be a problem, and then if there's anything we can do to address those problems. And they perform safety analyses on corridors and intersections all the time for us. We also, as staff, track the development throughout the county and how they affect transportation. So what we're talking about here is there's a lot of different instances of this, but for one, when large projects come in and apply for, say, a rezoning or a special use permit, staff, we work with the different people in planning division and review those projects to see how those would impact transportation in the county. A lot of times that's done through transportation impact analyses. If for the larger developments, we actually require them to model conditions of intersections around their developments after they're built, and they kind of put estimates in to see how much traffic that would generate. They run that through a model, and we can identify if we think it's going to cause problems. And if that's the case, then we'll work with that developer to try and address those issues. We also work with the Charlottesville Albemarle Metropolitan Planning Organization, and they develop what's known as the Long Range Transportation Plan. This is a plan that's updated every 5 years, and we have a region-wide traffic model for the entire MPO area within the county that basically puts the level of traffic on all of the roads in the county into this model, and then grows that, looking at future development, future potential development, and also how known developments. They put the numbers that would be generated by those into this model, and they can identify up to 20 years in advance what roads would be having issues with operations. So that's another way that we identify projects. And then finally, as you all know, because you just went through the master planning process, we work through the comprehensive plans, master plans, and then also various other plans like corridor plans to analyze the relationship between land use and transportation. And in those cases, we look out once again 20 years and see how the development changes in an area. And we work with the community to try and identify what transportation needs that we see coming around into the area, and identify projects through that. After we have those projects that are identified in all of those, we work to prioritize which projects we might want to move forward on. So we regularly update a list of transportation priorities, and this list basically is every project that's been identified in any of those types of plans that I mentioned before. So the comprehensive plans, master plans, corridor plans, long-range transportation plan, any project that is identified in any of those, we keep a list of them. And then we evaluate all of those projects based on a set of metrics, which we think kind of capture really the needs of a transportation system. So those include measuring them for safety, congestion, economic development, accessibility, land use, and environmental impact. And we score every project in the county based on quantitative factors that we look at that meet these different metrics. And so then we rank those projects. We go to the board and we say, we think this is how those projects are ranked. And the board will review those and okay it. And that's how we get the prioritized list of projects that the county wants to work on. I will say that when we say priorities, I just want to be clear that we don't start at number one and just, finish number one and then go to number two, because there's a lot of different opportunities for getting projects completed. So very often we will, not be able to work on one. Say one is a giant project, it's going to take a very long time to develop, but then you have something that's, maybe project number 12 or something that we have an opportunity to go for a grant for that would be able to make that improvement. So sometimes we do go out of order, but in general, that order is what we use to put county funding and county staff resources towards moving towards construction on them. This is just a list of some of those project or planning documents that we use when we're looking at trying to identify projects. And then what I have here is a map that shows projects that have been prioritized in the Crozet area. I will point out that I noticed that some of my labels on there are not accurate, but you can see the priority on the right-hand side in that table going from number 8 up to 89. And like I said, these are ranked countywide. So that's why the top project in Crozet was the number 8 countywide, the Eastern Avenue Extension South. So these are the projects with numbers on them were included in the 2019 update to that transportation priorities. We are right now, as part of the comprehensive plan, looking at updating those transportation priorities. And when we reprioritize them, hopefully later this year is when we're hoping to get to that. These other projects that you see the letters next to, those will be prioritized in that big group. The ones with the letters are ones that were not identified as projects prior to the most recent master plan update. So all of those are ones that were added by the master plan update. Some of them were pieces of other projects, but now that they've been broken up, that's why they only have a letter. So we will be working on that prioritization list over the next year.
Hey, Kevin, would you mind if I jumped in with a quick question?
No, not at all. Please do.
So on the list, if it seems like a few projects share the same priority number, what does that mean?
What happened there is that in the 2019 update, there was a project number 28, which identified actually a segment of Crozet Avenue from 3 Notched Road all the way down to Tabor. But then in the most recent master plan, we did that more detailed analysis, and those projects got broken out into separate projects. So when it gets reprioritized, those will have different numbers. It's just that was the carryover from the 2019 prioritization. And sorry, I can't see all the hands raised, but if you do have a question, go ahead and hit that hand button. And when I do notice it, I will try and grab it. Or if someone else wants to point it out to me.
Yeah, I'll look out and also jump in. It's fine if you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Oh,
Joe.
looks like Joe.
Yeah, Kevin, and just on that same point about the reprioritization and the shared numbers that Sean was mentioning, numbers 52, the shared use path along Route 240. Do you know if that's going to be broken out into separate prioritization items too?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
In the recent comp plan, we did break those out into 2 separate projects because, and that's something that we see a lot, is that in a plan sometimes there may be a problem area that's identified, and that problem area could be kind of large, but then as we go through planning, that problem is more specifically identified, and we start to see, well, this can be broken up into multiple projects that are much more manageable. So yeah, that's exactly what happened with the shared use path there. Okay, so now I'm going to get into some of the funding mechanisms that we look to move forward with these projects. And first, I'm going to talk about the ones that we use the most. Smart Scale is the primary state funding mechanism for all of transportation projects in Virginia. These are applications submitted locally. The county can actually submit 4 projects biannually. So it's a biannual application process. The submittals are done in the even years. So we do have a submittal period going on right now. And so we can identify 4 projects, but also I'll point out that the MPO can identify 4 additional projects. The TJPDC can identify 4 projects. So we often partner with them and have them submit the projects on our behalf. And so once those projects are submitted, we have to put in a lot of information that goes along with them, including all these factors that will be considered regarding what the project is, economic development factors, safety factors. We submit all that, and then the projects are scored statewide based on a cost-benefit analysis. So the state has developed this system that can score projects or give them a ranking based on all these different factors. And then they rank them statewide. And there's actually 2 pots of funding, one for the Culpeper district of Virginia, which is the district that we are located in, and then one that's for statewide projects. And the funding for those is separated, and then they're scored, and essentially the Commonwealth Transportation Board makes the final decision on these projects, but they really just go down the list. So the highest scoring project in the Culpeper district, all the way down until they run out of money, and then also the highest scoring project statewide, and then they go down the list until they run out of money with that statewide funding. But that's the largest amount of funding that we see for transportation in the area. The second funding mechanism that I have here is the revenue sharing program. This is a less competitive grant program that requires a 50-50 match of funds between the county and the state. So if the county is willing to put in 50% of the funding needed for a project, the state's willing to put in the other 50%. The considerations there, though, are that there's only $10 million available to any locality for in any one year or any one funding cycle, and also only 10 million per project, even if you wanted to go over multiple funding cycles. So these are typically good for smaller projects. You can submit multiple projects as long as you don't go over that 10 million in state funding. We'll get to, as we get to some of the other projects, we can talk about where these different funding mechanisms have been used, but these are the 2 that we use the most. And then I also have transportation alternatives here. This is another biannual application process that focuses on non-motorized travel choices. So these are typically bicycle and pedestrian projects. There's a few other categories that you can get in, but this is a much smaller pot of funding, and it's actually federal funding as opposed to state. And typically these projects are things that would cost definitely under $1 million, and it requires a 20% local match, and then the feds would pay 80% of that. So to be competitive on this one, and this is once again another competitive grant process, you really want to hit projects that are in that area of around like 500,000 to $1 million, somewhere in between there is this kind of the sweet spot for transportation alternatives grants. And then the secondary 6-year plan. So this is really just an annual allocation of state funds that is directed to the county. Most of that money is required to go towards paving of unpaved roads. And we have a process for prioritizing unpaved roads in the county as well. And we update that every year and identify which projects we want to move forward in. There is also additional funds in the secondary 6-year plan, including telefee funds, which we can use a little bit more discretion. We can decide what we want to put that to, but that's not a significant amount of funding. Those are typically for smaller projects and also for maintenance projects. Less frequently utilized funding mechanisms are the state of good repair. This is primarily used to fund bridge and road rehab projects, such as the bridge on Crozet Avenue that I believe is still underway, under construction. That is one that used the state of good repair program, and those are prioritized statewide. We do not submit those. Those are identified by VDOT, and that's how those projects get their funding. The Highway Safety Improvement Program, these are for areas that are identified as high safety issues. These are usually identified by VDOT. And they often use a data-driven approach to this. So really, you have to have a project that has a certain level of safety issues over what would be expected, and that's how it's scored and then funded through VDOT. And then there's other federal and state opportunities, such as currently the RAISE grant program, which was recently announced by the federal government, and this is like similar to what used to be Tiger or Build grants. Those are competitive grants that are released throughout the country, and that we have an opportunity to apply for. You can see I have some other programs here that we have worked to use to achieve some transportation improvements in the past as well. And then we have local funding. So the capital improvement program, every year we work with the other county divisions, including our finance and budget office, to update the capital improvement program. The Board of Supervisors identifies where they want to put that money. And very often we have a significant amount of funds that are put into the CIP under what we call the Transportation Leveraging Program. What we use that money for is to leverage with the state funding, so we can put that to a smart scale grant to help improve our score. We can use it for revenue sharing or transportation alternatives, or we can choose to just locally fund a project. And that ends up actually usually helping us achieve a project for a lower cost if we do it entirely locally. And then finally, developer funded and constructed improvements. As I mentioned, we do have, when developments come in for rezonings or special use permits, and they identify transportation issues that they may exacerbate or cause, they can proffer or condition improvements or give us funding to address the impacts of their development. And then also the developers can construct, or they do construct, the roadways and bicycle and pedestrian facilities within the development. And we see that a lot in Crozet and the whole Glenbrook area, where that entire network was all built by the developer that's working out there. Just a little bit about project implementation. There's a few major areas where this projects are broken out into. Planning design is usually the preliminary process where we are kind of conceptualizing the project and getting into the design. Then it moves into the preliminary engineering. That's still part of the design process, but that's really getting into the details of that project. And then the right-of-way acquisition phase, and then finally construction phase. And then I just wanted, because I know that people always are wondering like how long do these projects take and why. There's a lot of reasons why, and we can get into that a little bit more, but typically locally funded projects we can achieve a little bit faster within 3 to 5 years approximately. If we have to use state or federal funding through the Transportation Alternatives or Revenue Sharing Program, those are often anywhere from 5 to 8 years to get completed. And then the Smart Scale program, which usually funds larger projects, those can take anywhere from 8 to 11 years. Part of the problem with the reason Smart Scale takes so long is because that's actually funded at the end of the 6-year program. So even if we apply for a project and the state says we're going to fund you, that doesn't mean they fund you that next year. That means they're going to fund you sometime within 3 to 4 years of the announcement of that award. So that's why Smart Scale ends up taking quite a bit longer. And now I'm just going to get into some project updates for some of the more significant projects that you all see going around Crozet. To begin with, Eastern Avenue South Extension, as I mentioned, this was one of those that top project from the project prioritization a few years ago. And we have been working locally to try and advance this project. We had looked to submit a revenue sharing grant a number of years ago and realized that we had some out-of-date cost estimates for it. And so we decided to move forward with an engineering study using local funding. And so that engineering study actually was also looked at the potential locations of Eastern Avenue, and the selected location is what you see on this slide. You can see the light blue section in the middle is the bridge that is going to be required there. To the left, you see where Eastern Avenue currently stubs out over there by the West Hall neighborhood. And then it goes all the way down to 250, which is the road that you see going top to bottom of the picture. And that's right at the Corey Farms entrance. So this road will connect to Corey Farms Drive and then go over and connect to the existing Eastern Avenue. The project was submitted for a revenue sharing grant in the most recent cycle, that was last year, and we will find out if the state can fund that in April of this year. So really that's what we're waiting for, is that announcement as to whether or not the state is going to be able to provide the funding for that. This project is a significantly expensive project. We're looking at somewhere in the range of maybe $25 million to do this project. And so as part of that, we're also currently doing some additional studies out there, geotechnical studies, to see if we have any opportunities to reduce that cost or if our costs are accurate. The Route 240, 250 roundabout, this project was funded through HSIP about 3 years ago now. There were some project delays. This is a state administered project. So I can't say for sure what the delays were, but I have been told that they are looking to go to advertisement on this within this calendar year, and that construction should be starting by the end of 2022 to move forward with this roundabout. Another project, and this one was not actually prioritized in the last round because we had not identified it as a project, but through the Crozet master plan process, we did recognize that this was really the worst performing intersection in all of the Crozet area. So what we're doing now is we are looking to apply for a roundabout, the roundabout that was identified as the best solution by our transportation consultants during that master plan. This is going to be submitted as a smart scale project in this round. So that we will submit it in the next few months, and then it'll be scored and we will find out if it gets funded in 2023. And now we're getting into the projects that Lance's crew has been worked on. So I'm actually going to let him talk about the next few if he wants to jump on now.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. I'm going to ask you to back up one slide though, because I feel like you just covered like 15 years of ground in 5 minutes, and maybe it's a good time to give the CAC an opportunity to ask questions or reflect before I start to get in the weeds of active projects.
Yeah, any questions so far?
Yeah, thanks, Lance. I saw Mark, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, thanks, Ally. Kevin, can you go back up to the Eastern Ave connector? So, and I'm asking a question more just for general kind of understanding. So this road, very important road, it's literally in my front yard. How does this work when the county's putting a road in through people's property and having to obtain the right of way? What does that mean for the property owner? And I'm looking specifically at that bridge that, they use that field as a cow pasture. So I just kind of, for a good public awareness, just understand what that actually means when in the process you have to go through before you can even break ground on a project like this. And then I have a couple other, another follow-on question, because that kind of ties into sidewalks on Park Road, High Street, Tabor, because of right-of-way easement, so kind of looking for some expansion on that.
Yeah, sure. I can talk briefly about that. Look, maybe Lance would want to add to what I have to say, because I know he has dealt with that right-of-way process on a number of projects. But if the state is the one that is going to administer a project like this, then there is a right-of-way phase. And they have to go through a specific process where they work with that landowner to try and reach a fair and equitable agreement on the transfer of that property. So there would be money that exchanges hands very often if that's what the landowner wants to do for it. And they assess those properties to see what the impact would be if they think it's going to be what they call a full acquisition of the property or a partial acquisition. There's very often some easements that are involved that may impact the property, but then go back to the property owner. But eventually they will work through that and acquire that property if necessary. But that is always a factor that we have to consider when we are looking at a project, because we want to reduce the impact on property owners as much as possible. And very often, if it's a county administered project, we try and avoid any acquisition of property unless the property owner is in full agreement with that. Lance, did you have anything you wanted to add about the right-of-way process there?
I think only just to say that the right-of-way acquisition process is the largest variable for us when we're executing a project. It can be 6 months and relatively efficient, or it can be indefinitely deferred, 1 year, 2 years, just depending on an individual property owner. If we administer it locally, VDOT has an expedited process that tends to take significantly less time, and it's very difficult to balance what the right solution is in terms of the community need versus the property owner's rights and needs. That's all I'll say about that. But I see that both Ann and Jim have their hands up. Ann, you're in alphabetical order, so perhaps you should go.
I will just add that fortunately for people on both ends of the spectrum of Eastern Avenue, that layout has been established, except for the Coble property has been established for 25 years. So there was a big sign in Corey Farms, which has had to be replaced. It's been up so long that the first one wore out, to say future road connection here, so that all the future owners in Corey Farms would be aware of that. And the same thing for all the neighbors on Mark's side of on the north side of the creek, where the road was laid out on there. And I know Mr. Coble and his wife have worked with us for the last 5 or 6 years, trying to encourage us along to hurry up and locate, where the bridge could go in the most efficient design, engineering wise. So he will be glad to see it happen, I think. Thank you.
Yeah, so that, I guess, was my follow-on question, just trying to understand, with the right-of-way piece that needs to happen for this bridge, is this looking promising for the community that this will happen from a right-of-way aspect, or do we see some, and I'm not trying to call out the property owner, but I'm just curious if it's looking promising it's going to happen, or if we see some roadblocks, some headaches coming up with being able to put the bridge in and get this road. Go ahead, sir.
I'll just say that this is expected to be a VDOT administered project. And so they do have the ability to take property if it's necessary for the public good. So although they will work as much as they can to come to an agreement with the property owners, in the end, if there's no other solution, then they can kind of force that issue and make it happen.
Interesting. My only other question, and I'm a little concerned when this road hopefully someday actually gets put in, is there going to be a traffic light at the entrance to this road in 250 there? That's just a lot of traffic, and I kind of envision we put a solution in to fix traffic, and then we're creating a problem because of added car accidents at that intersection.
So we did do a traffic analysis of this prior to the design, and they put in the expected numbers or volumes of traffic. And at the initial stage, they did not find that a traffic signal would be necessary there. So when we build this, the idea is that it's not going to have a traffic signal. However, I will say that we need to see how it operates once it is in. And we will, as I said, continue to monitor this like we do any other intersection. And if a traffic signal is necessary, then we will move forward with a traffic signal or a different solution if there's one that might work better.
Okay, that's interesting. I guess one would think it'd be cheaper in the long run to just put a traffic signal in up front and then, okay. I understand. Thank you.
So, Kevin, since you can't see the hands, I'll say Mike Kunkel and Ms. Malik have their hands up.
Hi, yeah, so, yeah, Kevin, thanks for that. So I live in Corey Farm, and, it's already hard enough for us to out of Corey Farm and turn left onto 250. So I think it's an interesting how the data was gathered to determine that a light wouldn't be needed there, given the significant increase in traffic. So if the road gets put in and there's a study, that I'm presuming that's a 2, 3, 4 year process of assessment then to determine whether a light is needed. Is that a good guesstimate?
It doesn't have to be that long. We can move on a light pretty quickly. But I think what VDOT will want to see is that they'll want to get it in and find out what the real true traffic volumes on that road are going to be before they move forward with it. So we can do a study and probably a traffic signal, although it does take, some amount of construction. It's not something that is a many years long construction process. So if it's identified, then I think we'd be able to get it in, fairly quickly. And if there's a safety issue, then we would prioritize that.
Right. And I think what I'm saying is the safety issue. So now it's more traffic, but it's already, on the edge of being unsafe as we try to leave the neighborhood. So just a data point.
Thank you. Ann?
Just one follow-up on that. During the 4 or 5 years ago, pushing for the improvements that are currently under construction there at Harris Teeter, Joel D'Annunzio said, well, right now, the Corey Farm entrance doesn't qualify, but he said, once the bridge is done, whenever that is, that'll be a whole new ballgame. And I fully expected from back then that it would be part of the project. And so since Hillsdale and Greenbrier, Kevin, was pre-wired during construction of the original road to be ready to just plop a post and a light up there without any nonsense once that was determined. So is that something we can specify will happen here? Because I agree with the neighbors. This is all, we've already had 3 deaths in this very section over the last 10 years, and it already shows its deficits right now. So I hope that we'll be able to think ahead and get that extra wiring in the ground while we have the diggers there. Thank you.
And a great point, Ann. I think we will work with VDOT on making sure that it's ready, that there wouldn't be a delay if we expect a traffic signal to be necessary in the near term.
And Mark, do you still have your hand up? Is that a legacy hand or a new hand?
No, I had my other question popped into my head. So this may be geared for Ms. Malik. So we got the cost estimate. And I'm using this project as a broader example on how this process works. So we got a cost estimate. This is, as you stated, a very expensive project. The cost estimate came in a couple of years ago. So what happens when this gets approved? It gets put out for bid. And as we see with current costs of goods and material, the way it's increasing now, when the contractors bid on this job and it exceeds what we originally planned for, and again, I'm using this as the example, but in case of other projects in the county, how does a county react to that from a funding aspect when you've kind of earmarked money from the original estimate?
A very frequent question that comes up between Lance and I. So I will say, first of all, that when we come up with cost estimates, we escalate those to when we think construction is going to happen. So when I say 25 million or approximately 25 million for this, that's saying if we build that in 4 years, or I can't remember the exact number of years we added to that escalation, what do we think it would cost? And we have an average percentage that we expect construction costs to go up every year. So we factor that into the process. However, recently that percentage has been very inconsistent and growing at a much faster rate than we have seen in the past. So when that happens, and if it happens, then we have to start looking for additional funding options. And sometimes it is the county that has to come up with that money. And sometimes we have opportunities to go back to the state and ask for additional funding. We can break projects up. We have a lot of different options, but that is a significant issue that we have to deal with. I don't know if Lance wants to add to that, because I know it's probably keeps him up at night dealing with that stuff.
No, I don't think I have anything I want to add to that, Kevin. Thank you.
I just want to make sure we don't lose track of time. These are great questions, but we have a lot of projects to still hear about. So, Ann, I'm not trying to.
It's okay.
Okay.
Lance, you want to go ahead?
Okay, so we've advanced the slides. So this is very close to the area we were just looking at Corey Farm. You can see Corey Farm Road on the left of this drawing. I'm sure you're all familiar with this area. I'll just say, this project includes sidewalk along Corey Farm Road and Rockfish Road to Clover Lawn Lane. New sidewalks, pedestrian mid-block crossing with a rapid flashing beacon to slow traffic down, and sidewalk on the looks like the south side of this, but is actually the east side of the intersection. And this is project has been held up in part because of materials delays that are happening across the country right now. So we expected to be like at substantial completion right about now, but because of materials delays due to COVID and other factors, many of the stormwater infrastructures that are essential to be the first things that go in along these ways in terms of conveying water have been delayed. We had effectively a 6-month delay, but we do expect within the next couple of weeks we'll have those materials in, and that we'll be able to start really advancing this pretty quickly and finish before school starts. Didn't have too much else to say about this except that I know this is a sensitive area for the community in terms of traffic and commuting, and if just to say that in terms of road closures, we can expect some lane closures during this project, but those are limited to basically, not commuting hours, not weekends, not overnight. So a lot of the work that will happen that includes lane closures will happen between, say, 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. approximately. And I'll just pause there for questions about this specific project.
Go ahead, Mike.
Lance, can you refresh me and maybe the group? So the trail that goes around up Quarry Farm Road and then around Quarry Farm east there on 250 is the guardrail being adjusted, and where is the sidewalk relative to that guardrail? Do you know? I think the interesting is you're looking at the construction. It doesn't look like it's going to fit on the outside. So is the guardrail being adjusted? How does that fit with where the sidewalk is located? That's a really good question. I think VDOT likes to have the sidewalk behind the guardrail. I'm not as close to this project as I should be. My involvement mostly has been involved with working with property owners and acquisition of right away for this project. So I'm not as close to design as I should be. I'm just more at this point focused on execution and timeline. So I'm afraid I can't answer your question fully. Okay, thank you.
You don't know, Kevin?
I don't know, but we can check with the project manager and get back to you and send that in an email.
Okay. Are any of these like projects on the county website or anything where you can look at the plans, or is that no?
There's information on the county
like
website, but I don't think they have the specific designs on there. I'd have to check that.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't. Well, we have my department's maintaining is just sort of a high level schedule and description of the project map.
Okay. You want to move forward?
So I added a couple of slides to Kevin's PowerPoint earlier just to dig into this project and one other. And so I wanted to first start with the Crozet Square and Oak Street improvements. And this image that you see on the left is the bounds of the approximate bounds of the project. Obviously, we will be improving the square in front of Far Downers and other businesses to create formal parking areas. The traffic flow off of Crozet Avenue is not great right now. There's drainage problems that need to be addressed, and ADA compliance problems, and generally just the quality of the infrastructure is there. But that would include a full connection to a really fully built out Oak Street, which right now is more of an alley than anything else, with parking alongside that. So Kevin, if you would advance the next slide. please. This is the square focus. This is the current design. It's a 60% design, which is a big mile marker for us. We've actually, based on this design, recently gotten authorization from VDOT to move forward with further design. We are paused by them at 30% and 60% design phases, but they authorized our 60% design. So this is kind of what it's looking like. A lot of basically good ADA compliant parking spots and drainage infrastructure and really structured, improved parking based on what is there now. Pardon me. You can see to the left side of the screen a little bit how the traffic flow is designed to go. VDOT has signed off on this design to this point to allow us to move forward with acquisition of right-of-way. There's not that much that's involved in this. I think the CSX property is the one that bounds the top side of the screen that will take some time to work through, because they're a railroad and their first priority isn't parking that's adjacent to their property. Kevin, if you would go to the next slide. So this sort of shifts the view from north-south to east-west, but this is Oak Street. So you can see right now, this is, as I mentioned, kind of a driveway almost from Library Avenue up to the square. This is what the roadway and parking is looking like in the design process. It includes stormwater infrastructure, some additional ADA parking improvements, and generally a completed finished right away. To the top of the screen there is where the anticipated plaza would begin. And again, we're at 60%. We're entering the phase of the project in which we'll be seeking right away from adjacent property owners, and also advancing the design in parallel. And we hope that within 6 to 8 months, we'll be at the point where we consider ourselves at 100% design and hopefully have acquired the right of way, and then we'll begin the process of VDOT's review of the plans, the final plans, and then the procurement documents that will allow us to continue forward to design. We think it's going to be about 6 to 8 months of work to get to the point where we can issue bids, which if all goes well, generally takes 2 to 3 months. And then once the contract is awarded, we think about a year between when we provide notice of award to when the project is actually completed. So, it's longer than one would think. I often reflect that for this kind of project, it might take 5 years, but that if we own the property, I could, design and build a new elementary school in 3 years. So there's a lot involved in making this work happen. But we're actually, I think, right on schedule for where we thought we would be. And from a budgetary standpoint, pretty close to where we thought we would be as well, despite what's happening in the economy. And this is the last slide on this project. So I'll pause for a second for any questions.
Yeah, I think this is great. I can't wait for this Square and Oak Street improvements to actually happen. And I just want to push back a little bit on you saying that you're on schedule, because we approved this, like we voted for this, like our NIFI money to go towards this like 5-6 years ago. So we've been waiting patiently, and I'm very excited that it's come this far. But yeah, a really, really long time.
Yeah, I completely get that. I'll say that when Kevin was showing his, timelines of 3 to 5 years, 5 to 8 years, a lot of that was assuming that, like, from the time that VDOT approved it. So the 3 years, 5 to 8 years. So
it's been real drawn out. I know
it has been. Yeah. And yeah, we completely understand as county employees and partners and trying to make this happen.
Yeah, it's so important for the development of the lumber yard too. So I'm just excited that we're getting this close, and as usual, I'll believe the timeline when I see the equipment arrive on site.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jim.
I'm just I'm looking for the bike lanes and the pedestrian access on Oak Street. Is that anywhere in there?
I don't think we're at that level of detailed design where those would be indicated. Generally the width between the center line and the parking areas would indicate what the bicycle amenities are, but that level of detail gets worked out between 60% and 100%.
But the goal is to make sure that there is good access for bikes and walking.
Yes.
And not exclusively cars.
Correct.
Thank you.
So moving on to the next set of slides. This is the Barnes Lumber redevelopment. This is the, encompasses the extension of Library Avenue, connecting roads, the extension of the square all the way to the east. Kevin had some slides. I included this one in it because it was an early concept. The next slide shows kind of where we are now. Kevin, if you would advance that. So this was an image that I overlaid a couple of weeks ago to show the current design sort of over the top of what's actually out there on the site. And this was to help me visualize what was happening. So you can see if you cycle back and forth between the two slides, there's some slight adjustments to the orientation of the slides. In this phase, we are not anticipating formal parking. As the previous design showed, there would be informal sort of gravel parking constructed as part of the first phase out that would basically provide parking for the plaza and the square and other areas where we would grade out that and put in gravel parking. Kevin, if you could go back to the next slide, and you can see at the bottom of the screen the multi-use path that would be built out as well. This doesn't show some of the related infrastructure that would be built, and a lot of that has to do with drainage and stormwater management. So in the bottom right corner of the screen is a pretty substantial stormwater management facility that would be constructed there, but it does at least show a lot of the buildings and concrete that would need to be demolished to accomplish this project. This is still a work in progress. The note at the top says that we're nearing 60% design, which is a big milestone in how we work with VDOT, where they approve our design and allow us to begin the right-of-way acquisition process. So there's just a few small details that we're working through with VDOT on some specific intersections where we have asked for waivers to their typical requirements, and we've got to work through that. I think over the course of the next 2 or 3 months, we'll hopefully iron those out. But I'll say simultaneously, as Kevin mentioned earlier, that the cost of everything's gone up and timeline of everything has gone up. So, we've, to a certain extent, we're not, it's not that we're not still advancing the design, but we're also taking a really close look at this design and at current market conditions, and also the cost and requirements for relocating Dominion utilities, Ting utilities, all the other utilities. This corridor really is a major corridor for transmission lines that are above ground or underground that need to be relocated. And then all of these, elements of, grading of the property and demolition of buildings that is going to be required in order to make this project happen, is to find out really where we are from a budget perspective. So I'm working with the developer, the Crozet Newtown Associates, to ensure that, we're both, they as the folks who are designing this project and will develop this project, and the county is the ones who will construct this project and hand it over to the community ultimately, or understand that we're on the same page about cost allocation, and that that this vision achieves what the vision is for the downtown Crozet community generally, and that works to help this development be a success for what's a really essential part of the vision for the Crozet community. So that's the end of my prepared comments, but I'm sure there's a lot of questions about that. I may or may not be able to answer them, but I'm happy to try. Jim, I see your hands up.
Okay,
Sorry
thank
about
you. So just to clarify, are there more slides, or are we, okay, good, questions,
That's
comments? like to see it. All right, well, if you guys have comments, we can also, I think, Carolyn, I think Sandy's still in the attendee list. And we've had a hand up over there as well. So I don't, any of you committee members want to comment, or we can open it up to Matt. Looks like Matt, you're.
Oh, I wasn't sure. Open up to me. Well, I know
ahead.
you all have missed me over the past couple months.
We
Start
did.
off with Allie a happy birthday. She's
Aw.
27, if I'm not mistaken. But I want to, as you all know, I'd like to push back on a couple of things. Kevin, first off, I'm very concerned that the county would claim that they plan 20 years ahead of anything. I would just take that out of slideshows from here on out. The county didn't know what was going on 20 years ago. Today, they certainly don't know what's going to go on 20 years from now. When we talk about all these different developments and whatnot, it simply doesn't align with reality, historical reality or future reality. We've known that Eastern Avenue is going to be a problem since I was in middle school, and yet we don't know that there's going to be a need for a traffic light. Yet we've let Harris Teeter and the Clover Lawn develop. If the county had planned ahead, they would have made the Eastern Avenue line come straight into that development, so you don't have to have two traffic lights right next to each other. It's just terrible planning, and I just really push back on the 20-year time frame. Another example of that is the sidewalk on 250. If the county had any idea that development was going to drive, those sidewalks would have been built all the way down to Sparrow Hill, but they haven't, and the county has no plan to extend the sidewalk down to Sparrow Hill, despite how many new houses being built down there. It's just terrible planning, and to say that development drives our planning process is factually inaccurate based on that prime example right there. And then so there's no way for Sparrow Hill to be connected to the sidewalk. That's absolutely unacceptable, and it just blows my mind. Then we talk about Eastern Avenue. Do you have the plans for Eastern Avenue to have bike ped lanes all the way from 240 to 250? And how is the county going to address that with coordination with this recent sidewalk project that's going on? And then when we're talking about the revenue sharing mechanism and the transportation alternatives, you mentioned there's only $10 million a year available in revenue sharing per funding cycle or per project. And I'm curious to know how much the county budgets for that on an annual basis. And in transportation, you said it's things that cost under $1 million, and those are non-motorized or federal funding for non-motorized projects that requires a 20% match. So I'm curious how much the county allocates for those projects, and why we haven't seen, or what examples you have of those in Crozet, why we haven't seen any of those projects going on in old Crozet. Everything that you've presented is addressing needs from the recent development, yet it's not addressing the needs that the development has caused on the older parts of Crozet. Once again, I still don't have a crosswalk in front of my house. My parents have been paying property taxes on St. George Avenue for 37 years now, and I still can't get a properly designed and constructed crosswalk or sidewalks to downtown Crozet from St. George Avenue. That's unacceptable. Still unacceptable. Even through the Crozet master planning process, y'all didn't do that. And then last thing, are sidewalks, bike lanes, trails, multi-use paths considered transportation? If so, why hasn't the county focused on building a main artery shared use path that connects the entire development area in Crozet to downtown Crozet and out the old trail? That should be the absolute number one priority, is getting people off the roads. You will never be able to spend enough money to fix the cluster that you have created through recent development. The only way you're going to do that is to get people off of roads and onto bikes or skateboards or scooters or on their feet, getting from point A to point B. That should be the absolute priority. And I'm a little concerned with all the work that's going on. You all don't even have a way to get pedestrians safely from Old Trail into Western. There's not a sidewalk that goes to Western. There's a path, and it doesn't even have lights on it. So if you're going to put in a roundabout, how do you expect people to get across? The school system shouldn't even offer bus rides from Old Trail to Henley, Brownsville, or Western. Kids should be walking, but because of poor transportation planning, they can't.
Okay. Thanks, Matt. Does anybody else have comments? I appreciate, brought up a lot of things. We've got Brad with his hand up. Want to go to him? Hey, Brad.
There you go. Am I on now?
You're on.
Kevin, thanks for sharing. Just to follow up on Matt's diatribe, any movement on the idea of a tunnel under 250 at Western Albemarle, if that roundabout is going to go forward?
We have talked to VDOT about ways that we can accommodate pedestrians there. I can't say if that's going to be a solution that would be cost effective, but we have asked them to look at it.
That sounds like a good way of saying no, but if that's a smart scale project, is that something that can be included in your upcoming bid process? Roundabouts are great for cars. They're not great for pedestrians.
Yeah, well, we like I said, we did express how important it was to accommodate pedestrians at that, and because of the school location there. So I think, you know, we actually do have a lot of data that shows that roundabouts can be really safe, effective ways for pedestrians to cross. And so we'd like to make sure that that intersection is designed that way. What I was talking about with Smart Scale, though, it is a cost benefit analysis. So as the cost goes up for a project, then it tends to score worse and worse. So that's the issue that we've got to find a balance for, is how much do we want to put into a project before we start to get afraid that maybe we are pricing ourselves out of funding. So it's a tough balance, and we'll work with VDOT if we can come back in the future and do work like that, then that's something that we would look at. But I mean, you're right. Being honest, it's a really difficult location to try and get pedestrian underpass at, because of the difference in grades. The Western Albemarle side is so much higher than the other side there. But we will continue to work with VDOT and see if we can identify what would work best there.
Sounds like no chance. Thank you.
It is a very important pedestrian crossing. You know, I think that's a pretty good point. And just while I'm talking, I also agree with the traffic light at Corey Farm. Just seems like it's going to be completely inevitable. I mean, there's already one. It's our third cross street with Old Trail and Crozet Avenue. They both require lights. I just can't imagine why the third one wouldn't need a light. So I do hope that that's ready to go, if not installed at the same time. But go ahead, Sandy and Valerie.
I was just curious, when the county plans, for all of this stuff, especially the traffic. Are you looking ahead? Do you have a tally for how many projects are in the pipeline and a guesstimate as to how many new cars that's going to bring to Crozet?
Yes, that was actually part of that Crozet, the transportation study that went along with the master plan, is that we actually did a full analysis looking at every parcel in the Crozet development and what we could expect that to develop to, what densities, and then came up with estimates for how much traffic all of that would generate. And we ran that through a model that showed us how operations would work at all the intersections, or all the major intersections of in Crozet. Sorry, you muted yourself.
Sorry about that. So can you give us an estimate as to population for 2025 or even 2030? I mean, when you say you've looked at all these numbers longer term, what are we expecting?
I don't have those numbers, but I think they are available in our project build out. I'd have to talk with Rachel and find out if we can pull those numbers somewhere. I don't know them right off, but we have thrown numbers into this, and I thought it was actually available online in that maybe the development pipeline that we have on our county website. Rachel, do you know if we have that available, or?
It's not been actively updated for about 1.5 years. We've been trying to transition it to GIS, and our GIS update has hit some delays. So we will soon have that online. So we'll share it when it's available. We keep a spreadsheet of just our pipeline just so we can keep track of it, but it's like a big Excel spreadsheet. It's not something that is really digestible online. It's just a lot of numbers and parcel numbers, but we do track it.
And I will say that that analysis was included in the transportation study that went along with the master plan. So there was an appendix to that, and if that's not online, then we can find that and get it online so you can see. It's not the easiest. I don't know if there's actually an ultimate number that says this is how many units you're going to get, but it does give you a pretty good idea, and there might be a way to get there if you look at that overall.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Valerie?
I was going to turn back to the comment about the traffic signal at where Eastern Avenue connects with 250. Kevin, can you explain the issue of whether a traffic signal can be installed or not? That's not a decision that's up to the county, right? Isn't there a measure that VDOT, or you have to prove to VDOT that it's needed based on certain data or something like that? Can you clarify that for the group? Because it sounded like maybe some people thought the county was just choosing not to install it.
That wasn't what I was saying. It's just that it seems likely that this will meet those numbers. And I think Kevin explained pretty well that it's a VDOT decision and we have to prove that it's necessary.
Yeah, let me finish.
I just wanted to ask, I mean, like Ann said, like if it's pre-wired or anything that makes, the neighbors think that the county has done everything it can to make it a safe intersection.
Kevin, can you please continue and elaborate, add anything to that, please? I think it would be helpful for everyone. Thank you.
You're correct. And VDOT will look at the initial traffic analysis that we have. And if it shows that there's no way this is going to operate without a signal, then they would tell us at that time, at the early stages, you need to include a signal in this. But like I said, the initial study didn't show that. So what they typically require is that we can't preliminarily install a traffic signal somewhere. They have to see traffic that demonstrates the need through what they refer to as a warrant analysis. And basically they count the numbers that are going through an intersection, over a few day period, and then take the average and find out how many are coming from each direction and find out if that traffic signal meets those warrants for the amount of delay. And that's what happens anytime once an intersection is already existing to determine if the signal's needed.
Great, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Sandy, I don't know if your hand's back up or still up. Okay. Well, I want to make sure we have time for John's, but Matt, if you want to chime back in, maybe last call for this. Carolyn, can you unmute Matt again? Thanks.
Yeah. Hey, I'm hoping that someone in Albemarle County can reach out to Roanoke County. I would highly encourage Albemarle County to take a look at the GIS system that Roanoke County offers their citizens or residents. It makes it look embarrassing, the equivalent of like a PhD project to an elementary school kid running a GIS shop. Theirs is phenomenal. It shows everything from school systems to crime data. And I think that would be a huge investment in improvement in the services that Albemarle County provides. So I would highly encourage our folks to reach out to Roanoke County, who does a phenomenal job providing GIS data to residents.
Thanks. All right, any last questions for the transportation folks? Okay, I really appreciate you guys coming back and keeping us up to date on these things. It's great.
Thanks for having us.
Great stuff. We're really
Thanks for your time.
excited. Looking forward to all these things breaking ground. All right, well, thanks, and we can move on to Kelly.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me and the opportunity to talk to you guys about some of our updates for jaunt service in Crozet. And we are also asking for your help on a survey that we have going until March 25th. So I just have a few slides to go over, and I'm looking for feedback on how the surface is running and things like that.
Cool.
Can you guys see this?
Yes.
Can you see it big now?
Not yet.
Okay.
There you go.
Perfect. Thank you. So I apologize in advance. I already see there's a hand. I just want to make sure.
Oh, I'll wait. I'll wait till the end.
Okay. I want to apologize in advance. I've only been with Jaunt for 5 months, so any history that I don't necessarily cover and I don't have an answer for, I definitely can get you an answer sometime after today. But basically, we launched this Crozet Connect service back in 2019. We have fully resumed service since the pandemic. We are now fare free, and we don't have any plans to go back to charging fares. We also have some updated procedures. We are looking for feedback in general for figuring out if our stops are reasonable, if our schedules are serving the community, any current impacts that are going on, and if you guys generally have feedback and can help us share the word that we're looking to change service as much as possible to make sure that we get people to ride who need to ride. So when we started the service, we were seeing a pretty high spike in how many people were riding. So we were seeing over 1,600 people in a month. When the pandemic hit, we dropped and we reduced service at that same time. We resumed service back around August, and we have been doing full service since. We are seeing those numbers start to come back up again, especially with the gas prices going up recently. We've been seeing a lot more general interest in the service. And things that we are looking to find out are people still working full time, remote? Are they going into the office now? Are they worried about using public transit because of COVID related reasons or other reasons? If anybody's work schedules have changed. So if there are different timeframes people are going in so that they don't have as many people at the office. If there are any general changes that have happened in the past few years, especially with the amount of growth that has been happening. This survey has 17 questions. We have the link here and I'll show it again later. But our plan is to have this survey running through March 25th. Obviously, this is something that we find to be very important. Obviously, we want this feedback coming in. This is not the last time we will be doing a survey like this, but we want to make sure we know what our ridership is or could be, especially with the pandemic. For those of you who are not as familiar with the current service we run, we do run 3 different routes. So the west route goes on 64. It covers more of the western side of Crozet and then goes to downtown Charlottesville. The eastern side covers more of the Ivy Road portion. And then we have a loop that's going late at night, starts at 7:30. That was originally created to meet the demand for a hospital shift that was 12 hours long. So those people who were going in at 7 and getting out at 7 p.m. We are running on each of the west and east routes 3 morning runs. And so the service times that you're seeing for 5:53 to 8:58 in the morning, that is the general time frame in which those AM runs are going. And then the PM runs, including the afternoon loop, are going from 3:47 to 8:53. Some changes that have occurred in the past 5 months. We originally were only doing time points, so the bus would go to each location and then wait for passengers to get on board. We have now transitioned so that locations on the second half of that run, so for commuters that would expect going from Crozet to Charlottesville, those last destinations are stop points, which are estimated times that the bus would arrive, but would generally just drop off everybody on their way home or at work, so that it's faster for everybody who's commuting to be able to get to where they need to be in a quicker period. Some of the ridership that we are currently seeing, we're not seeing very many people that are riding on our first loop of the day on our western and eastern sides. So in the green, you'll see all the west loops. So there are 3 there, and then there are 3 in blue that are the eastern route loops. And so we're seeing 62% of all passengers are taking the west loops and 38% are taking the eastern loops. This is different from what we were seeing in 2019 at the very beginning. It was the exact opposite. As to what that could mean, just in general, it could be more growth on that side that's happened, or potentially more people are just deciding to, work remotely on the eastern side. But these are things that we're curious about and are wondering what the current situation is on that. For the PM ridership, we are seeing, again, more on the west side and a lower ridership on the eastern side. However, with that little bit of overlap, it suggests that there are people that are walking between the eastern and western connection points. So where Old Trail and I think it's Jarman's Gap Road, between that point and the downtown Crozet stop, the people are potentially walking between those 2 locations. But we are seeing a lot more ridership for the earlier time periods and less ridership in the evenings. Some of the more popular locations we are seeing at Old Trail Village Center and at Gray Rock Road. And again, this is the point that I was talking about, that we likely are seeing riders go between these two locations and being able to take either or, the west or the eastern loop. In Charlottesville, we're seeing the most ridership at Jefferson Park Ave, and that would be a lot of people who are going to work at the hospital. We are seeing very few people that are any people that are taking this to Fontaine Research Park, which is potentially just because more people are deciding it's a large parking lot, they can park there and it's not an issue. But we're curious if there are riders out there that are considering taking the service. And talking about the PM loop, the one that was originally designed to take some shift workers back home. Since the beginning of this service for the PM loop, we have only ever seen an average of less than 2 people per trip. So if there's a loop going in the evening, we only see at max around 2 people riding. Right now, we have 1 passenger riding every other day. So the ridership is very low, and we had thought that there could be some potential for those going into Charlottesville to stay in Charlottesville and maybe go out to dinner or do some other activities before they wanted to catch the later ride back in the evening. This is something we would love to keep going, and especially if there is ridership there, we would love that this keeps going. Right now, we aren't getting much ridership, and so that is part of the reason why we are doing this survey, is to see if we should restructure and consider maybe going to a slightly earlier loop, and maybe that would have more ridership. The main problem right now, and I'm sure you guys know about this, is the amount of drivers that everybody has. Everybody is short-staffed, and the amount of extra time it takes between the third loop of the evening and doing this loop is a good amount of time to be waiting if there isn't really ridership there or any potential. But we would love to know if there is potential. It's just waiting on something related to COVID. So again, this is the survey. You can find it tinyurl.com/Crozet Connect 2022. It did only just go up today for you guys to hear about it first. But so it'll be running for a couple weeks. And any questions? And Joe, do you have a question?
Yeah, I had a slightly different transit and jaunt related question. So I'll let anybody, if anybody else has something specifically about the routes or whatever, I'll jump in and then I'll jump in after that.
I don't see any other hands. Thanks, Kelly, for all that information. It's interesting, and I'm glad you guys are working so hard to figure out how to serve current and potential riders out here. Joe, you want to go ahead?
All right. Yeah, so Kelly, small sample size, I'll just say that my 4-year-old can identify the Crozet Connect. He loves seeing the cars. We live on Amber Ridge, so we see the Eastern Connector, and he identifies it. There's the Crozet Connect. Different question, and I know you've only been here a few months, so maybe it's a question for you, and also Anne, jaunt related. The Avenue, the Tony Shuttle. Where are we with that? I mean, it was such an exciting project, the autonomous vehicle when it launched, and that was. We're coming up on 3 years ago that thing happened, and I was looking back at the report that they filed back in October of 2019, and this is cool. I mean, the way that Perone described it, given the complexity of the route that it was going, They said that they thought it was the first autonomous shuttle with full autonomous capabilities with that complexity operating on public roads for the public worldwide. You know, we had the most impressive shuttle in the world, autonomous vehicle, and it's gone. Where is it?
Okay, it was a pilot project, absolutely, from the beginning. And it did prove its worth tremendously for us locally as well as to the world, because excuse me, the shuttle and the data was all taken to Florida for some huge expo. And now one huge city in Florida has gone into it whole hog with their thing. So we are now, microtransit is a new study, and there's a pilot going on with that through the state DRPT funding. And this kind of opportunity, this is one opportunity of a way to provide microtransit very efficiently. And someday to get to the point where it would not necessarily have so many drivers. So it is not dead and gone. It's just not ready to be implemented right now.
Did the county take possession of that vehicle? Because I'm looking at the old agreement. There was an agreement that they were going to donate the vehicle upon the county's request. Did the county never requested for the vehicle to be donated?
I do not know that we ever requested the vehicle to be donated, so I will find out.
I can answer that. We did. We do own the vehicle, but we do not own the software that goes with it, or the software has to be constantly updated and all that. So we do still have the vehicle, but we would have to pay to continue to get the autonomous service for it. And I'll just add that we are still looking at that as part of the microtransit study that Ann mentioned. We talked about possibly implementing that, or we talked about the Monticello, Thomas Jefferson's Monticello, possibly implementing that on their property as a way to get visitors around their property. The issue with it right now is it's a great program, a great service, but it is still outside of our cost range to be able to accomplish. So that's really the reason why we can't keep doing it right now. We have to find the funding, and hopefully that funding can come down a little bit to make it effective for us to implement around the county.
And sorry, Kevin, the funding is the software, the license. Because I mean the agreement that I was looking at, you know, it's saying that they're going to donate the vehicle, and then the software and hardware design will be licensed on a royalty-free basis, not sold in connection with the donation. So it still has to be updated, even though it's being licensed?
Yeah, it would have to be updated. We also, and I don't know if Kelly maybe knows more about this, but when we tried to work with John on it, we don't have drivers that are trained to operate those either. I think John was looking at maybe training drivers at one point in time, but I'm not sure if that's something that we can still offer. And for the equipment, that was only for that one small 6-person vehicle that we had. So if we wanted to try and expand that to larger vehicles, then that would be another cost.
I do apologize. I have not even heard of this prior to this conversation.
We had an autonomous shuttle that was taking people all around Crozet for like 3 months. It was amazing.
It sounds fantastic. That has not been in our specific purview for the past couple months that I have been there. But I do know that based on the transit vision plan that's currently being looked at, that there are some different pockets of microtransit that they are considering. If you have not seen that or been a part of it, if you look it up, it's just being done by the Thomas Jefferson planning department. So yeah, if there's anything about that kind of stuff that's going on, that would be the place to find it. But I will definitely talk to the rest of the staff and see what might have happened with any of those items. Mark, do you have a question?
Yeah, forgive me if this route does exist, is John looking at routes into northern Albemarle, like the Hollymead area, Cho, UVA Research Park?
Yes, so we do currently run a service into the 29 North area, and it does go up to Food Lion and Town Center, right where the Target is, that area. The existing problem right now is we receive different forms of funding. So the funding that we use for areas are basically designed for being outside of Charlottesville. And that area fits into urban funding, which is not classified within our money. So yeah, so we are currently running a service. Unfortunately, we may not be able to continue that in the future, and that will be taken over by CAT. They have a micro transit area that they're currently about to start using a handful of their own vehicles for. I think they bought something like 6 smaller vehicles to do a micro transit study. And so I know that is a big discussion right now that's happening, but yeah, we do some service around there. We are a little bit more north of that area though, where we can actually do our service just because of that funding difference. Any other questions? All right, thank you guys a lot. If you have any feedback, I think you guys probably should have my email that you could find, but it's kflamenco@ridejaunt.org. If you have any feedback for me, or if you can help by filling out this survey, that would be great, or letting other people know about it. But again, thank you for your time, and I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Kelly, and I'll share the link to the survey tomorrow, and we will try to get you guys some feedback.
Thank you so much. All right, Rachel.
Yeah, so I'm going to be fairly quick. I know we're over time. I just wanted to touch base on meeting scheduling. So not meeting scheduling, meeting topics. We're trying to roll out a little bit more structured approach to CAC agendas. And the reason for that is kind of twofold. First is that we're getting started with the comprehensive plan update project, which is the countywide comp plan. And same staff who staff our CACs are also leading that project. So we're just trying to be a little bit more intentional and efficient with our time, but also want to encourage CAC members to participate in our comp plan workshops and meetings as they come along. So we're trying to be intentional about how we schedule our topics. And I'm going to share my screen here and show you a tentative schedule that we are planning for the rest of 2022. And hopefully you can see my screen now. See if I can make this a little bit bigger for you. Okay, so this gets us through 2022. Again, it's tentative, it's subject to change if we want to remain flexible if things come up and we know we have topics we need to cover. But what we're planning for is on alternating months having prepared topics, just like this month. We started with March, a transportation topic, and we would do this for all of our CACs. But tailor them to the CAC area. So for Crozet, you got a transportation specific project for Crozet. And then on the alternating month, reserve time for community meetings for the legislative review processes where we have an application and we have a need for a CAC to host a community meeting. If the community meeting is not needed that month, we would recommend canceling. And the reason for that is we want to line up our comprehensive plan workshops with those off months so that we can encourage CAC members to participate in those. And those would be like public opportunities for any member of the public to participate in, but certainly CAC members would be welcome. Formats would be varied, similar to the Crozet master plan. We would have virtual formats. Hopefully we'll be able to do in-person formats relatively soon, where we can have open houses or workshops, and then also online components as well. So plan to do that throughout 2022. In May, we would come back to a topic with climate action planning and likely a budget overview, because the board would have just updated their budget or just approved their budget. In June, again, community meeting if needed, and also want to reserve time for CACs to choose topics of interest specific to them. Do the same thing in August. We take July off. We've done that for a couple of years now. And that also aligns with the board's schedule of taking one meeting off in July so that people can have a chunk of time to travel or take time off for staff and board members in CAC. And then through September, Parks and Green Systems and Trails, October, Development Review again, November, Economic Development and the Strategic Plan topic. And then December, again, back to community meetings. So that's going to be our approach. And we, again, like I said, we'll have the community meetings when needed, but otherwise we would recommend that we cancel. If there's extra time and CAC members want to discuss things, you all can still do that in your meetings as you want. And then I just wanted to share that for Crozet, you all will have a community meeting tentatively. I think we need to hear back from the applicant yet if this meeting works, but there is a proposed special use permit that needs a community meeting that just came in. And so we would tentatively try and do that for April. You all also have a need to do elections in April. So that would be your topic for next month. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. And I also wanted to mention that, I said it's a staffing thing. A big part of it is a staffing thing. In the proposed budget, there are positions for 2 new staff people to help support CACs as well, so that we want to continue to support you all and have staff here. We're just finding ourselves in a little bit of a pinch right now. So we want to try this out in 2022, check in towards the end of the year with you all, with the board members, with staff, see how it's going, see if we want to carry it forward or try something different. And that's all I have prepared tonight. I see there's a couple of questions. You all want to go ahead? I think Anne, maybe you were first.
Yes, I may have missed it on the last graphic, but I thought growth management policy was going to be the first chapter that we took up for the comp plan, and I didn't see that on your chart.
That's correct. So our comp plan has 4 phases. So phase 1 is growth management. And so that will be our first public meeting topic. Okay. I didn't use those words on there, but that will be the topic that we talk about at that meeting. It'll be April, May timeline, hopefully April, but we'll see. And that information we'll share out with you all once that's scheduled, once the meeting logistics. I'll make sure to share that with you all so you all can participate and attend.
Rachel, thanks for sharing this. I like the idea of trying to make time for people to participate in the comp plan. And I certainly appreciate the limitations on staff. My question is just in terms of like canceling meetings. I'm always just like loath to do that, just because it always seems like there's something we could be discussing. And so not to, put more on staff, but is there an option if, for example, we wanted to meet as a group, but staff was working on something else, facility meeting, is it actually required that, you or Tori, whoever is at these meetings, or can we just meet on our own, right? I mean,
it is not required that we're there. It would be, as long as we're virtual, required that Carolyn be there. And I think Carolyn's time is, I don't want to speak for Carolyn, but her role, part of her role is to support these meetings. So if you all wanted to have a meeting, your regular monthly meeting, and I wasn't able to attend, that would be fine. You could talk about your own topics of your choice. It just wouldn't have staff support.
Okay. Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, thanks for asking that, Joe. I mean, we certainly used to meet regularly without any staff support, so.
Yeah.
It seems like we could do it when necessary.
Oh, can I just, one for Rachel, I did read, I saw a little bit in the progress, and Anne, I know about the Board of Supervisors going back to in-person meetings. Do we have a sense of potential timelines for this board to go back in person, or what is the thought process and the time for making that decision, I guess is the better question.
I think the official decision will be, I think, talked about again next week. And assuming that all doesn't go to pot on the caseloads, that we were hoping to go back public or in person in April. And there be supervisors, planning commission, and school board would have full virtual option all the time going forward. And then later on in the series, in the months, we'll figure out how to do other boards. But I think as long as the building space is available and we're meeting and the buildings are open, which I expect will happen in April, as the schools are expecting to open their facilities in April for meetings like town halls and things like that, then we should be able to head back to the library.
Great. I'm looking forward to it.
Me too.
All right, any other business questions? Do we need to solicit nominations, or are we gonna just do that on the fly next time we see each other?
I thought we had at least Joe was going to move up to chair. I think we talked about that, and wasn't there a vice chair volunteer person? Who am I staring at here? Somebody who has the minutes should be able to figure that out. Maybe. Anyway, everybody look through their minutes and see. But okay. I thought that our vice chair was planning to move up.
I think Mark was considering it, right?
I think everyone should consider it.
Having been nominated by a previous vice chair, I believe.
Anyway, we do need people to serve in these roles. So do we have any other people joining that you can tell us about? Because I got Jim here today.
Yes, and Ken Thacker was also appointed, and I don't know if he was able to, maybe he was not able to be here tonight. Okay. And Jimmy, and why am I drawing a blank on the third person we appointed? I apologize for that, because I know that there are 2 more spaces, or maybe we appointed 2 and there are 3 more spaces. That's what it was. So we are still looking for applicants. There were quite a few people who did not reapply to have another round. So that's why we had so many.
We just have 2 new members. That was Jim Dumpkin and Kenneth Thacker, and then Costas, Joe, and Valerie all reapplied.
There you go. That was how I got the 3 + 2. Thank you, Carolyn.
You're welcome.
Okay, but we still have 3 openings for people to still apply. And do you have a deadline for them, or is it open?
Applications, really, it'd be very best to have them in the Wednesday before. That allows them to be part of the draft agenda, which goes out on Thursday or Friday, and then we're able to be well informed when we go into the meeting the next week. So 7 to 10 days in advance of the meeting, the first meeting of the month, would be ideal.
Okay, so
and people can also attend, and then
end of March.
Yes. Yeah. So 2 weeks from now, 3rd week in March, 2nd week, 4th week, and beginning of the 4th week in March would be fine.
Okay. All right. Tell your friends and neighbors. Be ashamed to have empty seats on our on our committee.
He has his hand up again.
Yeah, Matt, you can go ahead.
Yeah. Hey, I hope that each of you all who sits on this can make a commitment to use a non-motorized means of transportation to get to these meetings when they return in person. I think that would highlight the need for investment in bike ped infrastructure. And I hope that you can pass along to the supervisors that I hope each supervisor, I suppose you live in Earlysville, so a bit of a drive to Crozet, but each supervisor takes a non-motorized means of transportation to board meetings or uses to get to and from board meetings. It will highlight the need for this county to invest in bike ped infrastructure and alternative transportation. So I hope when I see you guys in person, that I will not see your cars in the parking lot.
Cool. All right, well, that is all that I have. And so unless anybody has any other comments or announcements, I'll read my thing. Our next meeting is tentatively scheduled for April 13th, I think, at 7 p.m. Opportunities for the public to access and participate in the electronic meeting will be posted at a later date in accordance with Emergency Ordinance number 20-A16 and open meeting requirements of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. All right, thanks for coming, everybody, and see you soon.